are draped yellow silk curtains, and in the center of each appears a white porcelain numeral. These compartments are used as public telephone stations, the applicant being shut in so as to be free from the noise of the outer room. Mr. Barnes spoke to the girl in charge, and then passed into the compartment numbered 2. Less than 5 minutes later, Mr. Leroy Mitchell came into the reading room. His keen eyes peered about him, scanning the countenances of those busy with the papers or writing. And then he gave the telephone girl a number and went into the compartment numbered 1. About 10 minutes elapsed before Mr. Mitchell came out again, and having paid the toll, he left the hotel. When Mr. Barnes emerged, there was an expression of extreme satisfaction upon his face. Without lingering, he also went out, but instead of following Mr. Mitchell through the main lobby to Broadway, he crossed the reading room and reached 23rd Street through the side door. Thence he proceeded to the station of the elevated railroad and went uptown. 20 minutes later he was ringing the bell of Mr. Mitchell's residence. The Buttons, who answered his summons, informed him that his master was not at home. "He usually comes in to luncheon, however, does he not?" asked the detective. "Yes, sir," responded the boy. "Is Mrs. Mitchell at home?" "No, sir." "Miss Rose?" "Yes, sir." "Ah, then I'll wait. Take my card to her." Mr. Barnes passed into the luxurious drawing room and was soon joined by Rose, Mr. Mitchell's adopted daughter. "I am sorry papa is not at home, Mr. Barnes," said the little lady, "but he will surely be in to luncheon if you will wait." "Yes, thank you, I think I will. It is quite a trip up, and being here I may as well wait a while and see your father, though the matter is not of any great importance." "Some interesting case, Mr. Barnes? If so, do tell me about it. You know I am almost as interested in your cases as papa is." "Yes, I know you are, and my vanity is flattered. But I am sorry to say that I have nothing on hand at present worth relating. My errand is a very simple one. Your father was saying a few days ago that he was thinking of buying a bicycle, and yesterday by accident I came across a machine of an entirely new make, which seems to me superior to anything yet produced. I thought he might be interested to see it before deciding what kind to buy." "I'm afraid you're too late, Mr. Barnes. Papa had bought a bicycle already." "Indeed? What style did he choose?" "I really do not know, but it is down in the lower hall if you care to look at it." "It is hardly worth while, Miss Rose. After all, I have no interest in the new model, and if your father has found something that he likes, I won't even mention the other to him. It might only make him regret his bargain. Still, on second thoughts, I will go down with you, if you'll take me into the dining room and show me the head of that moose which your father has been bragging about killing. I believe it has come back from the taxidermist's." "Oh, yes, he is just a monster. Come on." They went down to the dining room, and Mr. Barnes expressed great admiration for the moose's head, and praised Mr. Mitchell's skill as a marksman. But he had taken a moment to scrutinize the bicycle which stood in the hallway, while Rose was opening the blinds in the dining room. Then they returned to the drawing room, and after a little more conversation Mr. Barnes departed, saying that he could not wait any longer, but he charged Rose to tell her father that he particularly desired him to call at noon on the following day. Promptly, at the time appointed, Remington walked into the office of Mr. Barnes and was announced. The detective was in his private room. Mr. Leroy Mitchell had been admitted but a few moments before. "Ask Mr. Remington in," said Mr. Barnes to his boy, and when that gentleman entered, before he could show surprise at finding a third party present, the detective said, "Mr. Mitchell, this is the gentleman whom I wish you to meet. Permit me to introduce you to Mr. Mortimer J. Goldie, better known to the sporting fraternity as G. J. Mortimer, the champion short-distance bicycle rider who recently rode a mile in the phenomenal time of 1.36 on a 3-lap track." As Mr. Barnes spoke, he gazed from one to the other of his companions with a half quizzical and wholly pleased expression on his face. Mr. Mitchell appeared much interested, but the newcomer was evidently greatly astonished. He looked blankly at Mr. Barnes a moment, then dropped into a chair with the query, "How in the name of conscience did you find that out?" "That much was not very difficult," replied the detective. "I can tell you much more. Indeed, I can supply your whole past history, provided your memory has been sufficiently restored for you to recognize my facts as true." Mr. Barnes looked at Mr. Mitchell and winked one eye in a most suggestive manner, at which that gentleman burst into hearty laughter, finally saying, "We may as well admit that we are beaten, Goldie. Mr. Barnes has been too much for us." "But I want to know how he has done it," persisted Mr. Goldie. "I have no doubt that Mr. Barnes will gratify you. Indeed, I am as curious as you are to know by what means he has arrived at his quick solution of the problem which we set for him." "I will enlighten you as to detective methods with pleasure," said Mr. Barnes. "Let me begin with a visit made to me by this gentleman 2 days ago." At the very outset his statement aroused my suspicion, though I did my best not to let him think so. He announced to me that he had lost his identity, and I promptly told him that his case was not uncommon. I said that in order that he might feel sure that I did not doubt his tale. But truly, his case, if he was telling the truth, was absolutely unique. Men have lost recollection of their past, and even have forgotten their names, but I have never before heard of a man who had forgotten his name and at the same time knew that he had done so. "A capital point, Mr. Barnes," said Mr. Mitchell. "You were certainly shrewd to suspect fraud so early." "Well, I cannot say that I suspected fraud so soon, but the story was so improbable that I could not believe it immediately. I therefore was what I might call analytically attentive during the rest of the interview. The next point worth noting which came out was that, although he had forgotten himself, he had not forgotten New York, for he admitted having come to me without special guidance." "I remember that," interrupted Mr. Goldie, "and I think I even said to you at the moment that it was significant." "And I told you that it at least showed that you had been familiar with New York. And this was better proven when you said that you would spend the day at Central Park, and when, after leaving here, you had no difficulty in finding your way thither. Do you mean to say that you had me followed? I made sure that no one was after me." "Well, yes, you were followed," said Mr. Barnes with a smile. "I had a spy after you, and I followed you as far as the park myself. But let me come to the other points in your interview and my deductions. You told me that you had registered as Mr. M.J.G. Remington. This helped me considerably, as we shall see presently. A few minutes later you took out your watch, and in that little mirror over my desk, which I use occasionally when I turn my back upon a visitor, I noted that there was an inscription on the outside of the case. I turned and asked you something about the watch, when you hastily returned it to your pocket with the remark that it was an old family relic. Now, can you explain how you could have known that, supposing that you had forgotten who you were?" "Neatly caught, Goldie," laughed Mr. Mitchell. "You certainly made a mess of it there." "It was an asinine slip," said Mr. Goldie, laughing also. "Now then," continued Mr. Barnes, "you readily see that I had good reason for believing that you had not forgotten your name. On the contrary, I was positive that your name was a part of the inscription on the watch. What, then, could be your purpose in pretending otherwise?" "I did not discover that for some time. However, I decided to go ahead and find you out if I could. Next, I noted 2 things. Your coat opened once, so that I saw pinned to your vest a bicycle badge, which I recognized as the emblem of the League of American Wheelmen." "Oh," cried Mr. Mitchell. "Shame on you, Goldie, for a blunderer." "I had entirely forgotten the badge," said Mr. Goldie. "I also observed," the detective went on, "little indentations on the sole of your shoe, as you had your legs crossed, which satisfied me that you were a rider even before I observed the badge. Now then we come to the name and the significance thereof. Had you really lost your memory, the choosing of a name when you registered at the hotel would have been a haphazard matter of no importance to me. But as soon as I decided that you were imposing upon me, I knew that your choice of a name had been a deliberate act of mind, one from which deductions could be drawn." "Ah, now we come to the interesting part," said Mr. Mitchell. "I love to follow a detective when he uses his brains." "The name as registered, and I examined the registry to make sure, was odd. 3 initials are unusual. A man without a memory, and therefore not quite sound mentally, would hardly have chosen so many. Then why had it been done in this instance?" What more natural